Wizards completely cleaned house. The metagame is nothing what it looked like before, and what exactly do you need to be prepared for? That's what we're going to talk about today. Everyone, this is Nikachu, Merfolk Master, and my god, I've never seen so many bannings from Wizards of the Coast. In one banning announcement, they banned 5 cards. The metagame, I wouldn't say it's not unrecognizable, but I will say, just generally speaking, the metagame's all over the place. People are playing whatever they want. I mean, people are reaching back into like 2018, 2017, 2016 for a deck that's like they thought might have been dead. I think a lot of people online, they have a lot of archetypes in their collection and they just completely ignored their Magic the Gathering online account because the metagame was so hostile for so many years, and now that the word is out that everything has changed, nothing is what it used to be, people want to go back and see, hey, is my old pet deck really good again? So right now I'm giving you a top 10, but I can't guarantee you're going to be playing against any of this in any given league because there is just so much variety out there, and really honestly I can say you could play almost anything right now because you could be up against almost anything, and so it's basically a free-for-all. But in an open event, I think this will be a little bit more, this list will be a little bit more resourceful, and I think over time the metagame will still shift and shake up to what I'm about to recommend. Now, all that being said, I want to give an honorable mention. There's a lot of good decks out there. I think Jund's playable, Amulet's playable. A lot of those decks, for the most part, not going to be seeing too much play because any deck that got a ban, people just don't want to play it in the coming metagame. So like if your deck got a ban, yes, it's very much likely still playable. I mean, people are still playing Control even though Uro's not there. But that being said, I think I want to give an honorable mention out there to Bogles. Interestingly enough, Bogles didn't see much play at all for like years, and now there's actually seeing a little bit of play. I just want to make that mention because I think it's interesting now that Wizards has turned Modern back into a turn 4 format. All of a sudden we're seeing some Bogles right now, and I think that's because Bogles absolutely cannot win on turn 3 unless they have the luckiest of lucky hands of Bogle into Ethereal Armor, Ethereal Armor, Ethereal Armor, Ethereal Armor into Rancor by turn 3. Yeah, if you got that sort of hand, maybe you got it. But overall, like, that's just not going to happen. It's basically a deck that kills on turn 4, 5, or 6. And in a format where, like, there's a lot of oops all spells, or, you know, any deck with Simian Spirit Guide for that matter, you're just not going to race. Like, there's going to be enough matchups out there that are basically going to be auto losses and can't compete in the metagame. So anyway, just honorable mention out to Bogles, and just something that we can learn, that decks like this, they're better off when the metagame is not too fast. There's not too many decks that are trying to kill immediately by turn 2 or 3. So anyway, honorable mention to Bogles. Now, before we get into our top 10, I'd love to ask, why are you subscribed? You're here every video. There's over 20K a video for these things. You love my top 10 decks to beat. So if you want to support top 10 decks to beat, please turn the subscription from red to gray. You know how to do it. Click, click, click. All right, let's get into the top 10. We're going to start off with Death Shadow. Now, not exactly Rakdos Death Shadow, but we can add them all together. We're seeing a resurgence of Jund, but especially Grixis Death Shadow. People want to move back to the old Control-y versions of Death Shadow. You know, it's like the Jund players. They bought into Jund when Jund was super popular back in the day, back in like the 2013s to 2015s. And they're sticking with the deck. They're stuck. They're like, I'm committed. This deck's going to be good for forever. And I think around 2017 to 2018, that's exactly what the Shadow players did. In the end, the most popular, best version of Shadow was Grixis Shadow. So we're seeing a resurgence of Grixis Shadow in the metagame, amongst other different variations of Shadow. Be prepared for all variations, but, you know, between the super aggro Rakdos and also now the more slow, patient, controlling versions with Gurmag Angler, you got to be prepared for them in the metagame. Moving on to number 9, Storm. Storm, maybe a very underrated deck. The trophy leader for the last Modern season was on Storm. Just annihilated everyone, still performed well in the top 32. Maybe a very skill-intensive deck in order to squeeze out the best of the advantages. Very good toolbox deck, by the way. I mean, Gifts Ungiven can get anything. But basically, they got the tools. If they need to find something, a removal spell, they've got it. In addition to comboing off both through Grape Shot and Empty the Warrens. So Storm, do not underestimate Storm. Very strong deck, and maybe was going to get more popular in the coming months. So number 8, Stoneblade. Stoneblade was a little bit too slow for the last metagame. I mean, what can I tell you? That's why Stoneforge Mystic should have been taken off the ban list a long time ago. I mean, the moment they print Kolaghan's Command, they could have done this, right? You can shoot the Stoneforge Mystic and blow up the Batterskull at the same time. But Stoneforge not going to be performing very well in a metagame that is insane. Like, what is a 4/4 Batterskull going to do against an army of zombie tokens? Against an Uro or an Amulet deck? What is it going to do? Is it going to race like an Oops All Spells deck that wins on turns 2 to 3? Like, let's be serious here. But now that the format has slowed down, can be a little bit more grindy and interactive. Hey, it's Stoneblade's time to shine. Stoneforge Mystic decks are coming back out. A lot of people are love this type of deck. And now it most certainly is playable. I have Stoneblade here in at number 8. Number 7. Hammer Time. Hammer Time, still considered a big meme deck, very underrepresented. Also, like, I don't know how to put it. Like, this is a very underrated deck. It's super powerful. People like Laplacian very consistently winning with the deck, making top 8s in Modern Challenges on a very regular basis. I'm sure he's making bank with the Hammer Time deck. And there's still no artifact hate in the metagame. I mean, we're going to go through this whole list. No one's respecting artifacts because like the only artifact deck out there is Hammer Time. And I don't know why, but not enough people want to pick up this deck. And maybe it's because it's probably a difficult deck to pick up. You got to play a tight game to get the full value out of it. A lot of ways you can go wrong because do you tutor? When do you play the spells? Main phase at instant speed. A lot of niche interactions that you got to know. And I'm sure sideboarding is absolute hell because you have to be prepared for your opponent's cards. But still, the Hammer Time deck, super powerful. Maybe one of the better decks that can really kill really fast and still have grind because of Lurrus. Lurrus can bring back your creatures, bring back the hammers. Anyway, Hammer Time should get some respect. I think it's a very underrated deck at the moment, but because not so many people are playing it, I got it here at number 7. Number 6, Tron. Good old-fashioned Tron. Not to say that Tron ever left us. Yeah, there was that moment with the Tybalt's trickery into the Emrakul. Yeah, they couldn't beat that deck at all. But Tron, obviously, very solid choice. I don't have it here on the list, but Eldrazi Tron also making a resurgence. Probably deserves to be somewhere on the map, given the fact that there's maybe not too many decks weak to Chalice of the Void, but enough decks weak to the Chalice of the Void that it would have an advantage. But classic Tron doing very well. I don't know, there's really not much to say. If you get 3 fucking lands in play and it adds 7 mana, like how do you go wrong? How do you go? Like, people still lose to turn 3 Karn, people. I mean, it's just it's an outright powerful deck, and its positioning usually depends on like how fast is the metagame. I mean, if there's like a lot of infect out there, I mean, maybe this is not so good. So the fact that Modern has slowed down is beneficial to the Tron deck. Tron doesn't want a fast metagame, doesn't want to be killed on turn 2 or turn 3. It needs a slower metagame, so Tron is back at number 6. So moving on to number 5, Burn. That's right, Burn, and maybe. There are a few reasons why Burn is very well positioned right now. The first one, turn 4 metagame. Burn cannot win on turn 3. I mean, under some absolute bizarre lucky circumstances with a bunch of Swift Spears and a bunch of 1-mana spells. Yeah, sure, it's possible, but it's just very unlikely. It also depends on the opponent basically not interacting with you whatsoever. I mean, what are the odds of that? So the fact that the metagame has slowed down to a turn 4 metagame says that's great for Burn. Burn is a turn 4 deck. Burn can take advantage of that. So that is one of the main reasons where we're going to be seeing Burn coming back. Second reason, I mean, having a proactive strategy is very good in like a level 0 metagame. And we're not exactly at level 0 right now. Like, we're seeing some results come in, but being on the aggro, not being on the defensive, not being a reactive deck, that's where you want to be. Because, hey, like I said, you can play against anything. Just jump in a league. You're going to run into, like, I ran into like Grixis Control and all sorts of other weird stuff from like 2016. Anything is possible, and if you're the Grixis Control player, you're like, I have no idea what's going to be coming at me. They could play anything. So how do I customize my main deck? How do I customize the sideboard? But if you're the burn player, who cares? I mean, you put the onus on your opponent to have the right cards. You put the onus on the opponent to be prepared for you. And sure, maybe burn is one of the decks to beat. That's one of the easier ones to prepare for. But still, they can't prepare for everything. And if that particular archetype didn't have enough stuff for burn, they will get burned by the burn deck. So being proactive, very, very useful strategy. And it's just solid. Like right now, burn is just solid at the moment. It's just a very strong deck. And I think as we look at the rest of this list, it has like a relatively good position against everything. Searing Blaze and Searing Blood will have some good tempo advantages against any of the decks that are running creatures. And specifically because Uro is gone from the metagame, I mean, that helps a ton. There was some burn, I understand, in the late stages of the last metagame. It was making a resurgence, especially during the Tybalt's Trickery era. At that point, I can't honestly speak why it was seeing play out of nowhere, but it can't hurt that Uro is gone and now burn. Like, it has a lot less life gain that it has to deal with going on from here out into the future. Anyway, burn, number 5 on the top 10 decks to beat. Going into number 4, Dredge. All right, well, your Oops All Spells deck is banned, and like any deck playing Simian Spirit, you can't play Ad Nauseam anymore, not as easily. You're gonna have to make some accommodations. Those Ad Nauseam decks have like moved on to like Inverter. Some people are trying to include Mox Ambers and like a Springleaf Drum in order to add the extra mana for the Ad Nauseam deck. Anyway, those are all very interesting and good, but if you want to play top tier combo deck, well, you can't play Dredge because apparently Dredge isn't a combo deck. But if you want to play a non-interactive aggro deck, Dredge is there for you. And besides, it feels like a combo deck anyway. So Dredge is basically like the best by default, supreme, like non-interactive. Fuck, I just want to call it a combo deck. But anyway, it's a very powerful archetype right now. Did not get hit by the bannings and was always good. I mean, it was never bad. It wasn't like never poorly positioned or anything. But you had a lot of options. If you want to play some BS deck, you could play the Ad Nauseam. You could play the Oops All Spells. You could play like Tybalt's Trickery. Now, if you want to play a BS deck, the only BS deck available is the Dredge deck. And it's still as good as it was before. Nothing has changed about it. Still has the Creeping Chills. They didn't ban Cathartic Reunion or anything like that. So, and especially in, again, the level 0, level 1 metagame, this is going to be an excellent choice. Not too many people know how much graveyard hate that they need to be packing or preparing for. But I'm letting you know right now, like Dredge is going to be one of the decks to beat. And it's probably going to be racking up more and more results as the time comes, like as the days and weeks go by, because it is really, I think, really well positioned right now. So if you want to be prepared for the metagame, or if you want to play a deck that's probably going to just outright blow people out, you might want to pick up Dredge in today's metagame. All right, moving into number 3, Azorius Control. And you know what? I want to just add, like, not just Azorius Control, it's like all the control decks. We're talking Jeskai Control, we can take Grixis Control, Dimir Control. Everyone's trying to play their control deck. Before, for like the last year and a half or so, ever since Oko got printed, I mean, it's been a Bant control metagame. People were leveraging Oko Thief of Crowns with Ice Fan Quaddle, and then when Arkham's Astrolabe got banned, they got rid of the Ice Fan Quaddle, but when Oko got banned, they moved to the Uro, and Uro basically held together the Bant control deck, or the 4-color Uro Omnath deck for a very long time, or the Teamer decks. But anyway, the green coming from Uro is what made people move to those control decks, because if you're not playing Uro, you're just playing an inferior control deck compared to the other ones. But now that Uro is banned, there is literally no reason to go green, really. There's no reason, so people are exploring the older versions of control decks. Now, I have to say, though, I think, in my opinion, all the control decks at the moment are very overrated. People are in the exploring phase. They are in the playtesting phase. They want to know what is working, and they don't know yet. There was a Modern Challenge that was won by an Azorius Control player, but there were like no other copies of Azorius Control in the top 32. People have not figured out exactly what is working, and they're playtesting and trying to figure it out. But I think right now, as as they are trying to customize for all the aggro and combo decks. They're still figuring it out. They're still feeling it out. So I think right now they're not at the level that they want to be, but you need to be prepared for these control decks because it's just in such high quantity. I don't know how you enter a league and you don't play against one control deck. They're fucking everywhere in my opinion. So a little overrated, I think, but I think as weeks go by, they're definitely going to find their footing in the metagame. Azorius Control, like I said, Control has everything. They have a million cards, right? I've made videos on this. They could ban another 4 cards and it would still be like one of the best decks with all, like the best toolbox of all time. Doesn't matter that Mystic Sanctuary and all the rest of them got banned. Okay, they lost Mystic Sanctuary, and then they just go back to Snapcaster Mage. No big deal. You know, it's like not exactly the largest loss of all time. So Azorius Control, big in numbers. Eventually they'll find their way, but just letting you know, you do have to be prepared for Control in the metagame. Moving on to number 2. Again, still on the theme of decks being aggressive, proactive, Izzet Prowess. Izzet Prowess, again, a deck that was not affected by the bannings and super, super hyper aggressive with their Swift Spears, Soulscar Mage. The fact they're not that weak to Chalice of the Void. Even if you bring in Chalice of the Void, could shaft them, but still between the abrades that they bring in and also all the cantrips that they can play early on to look for those abrades in advance, or the Stormwing entity that they put onto the battlefield, and you know they have Manamorphose to cantrip, they can dig for the answers to Chalice of the Void. Sometimes they just ignore it. Seriously. My opponent goes like Sprite Dragon turn 2, next turn Manamorphose Stormwing entity, play Gut Shot, attack with this Sprite Dragon for a lot, turn 4, basically kill me. Just empty their hand, kill me with Prowess. I mean, that's just how it is. Not to mention they could have a bunch of, 2 mana spells in addition to all their 1 mana spells. But anyway, they have a lot to work with to play around Chalice of the Void. They do have very beefy threats. So, and it's just a very good, strong, proactive deck. I mean, if you were prepared for it before, make sure you're still prepared for it. It was doing well in the last metagame, even though it was super fast. And now that the metagame's going slower, I don't know if that's going to be an advantage or disadvantage. So far, they seem to be doing well. I don't know how this is going to work in the long game, but they seem to be doing okay. Not outright winning events, but putting up a lot of places in like top 32s. Izzet Prowess, definitely a deck that you want to be prepared for. So before we move on to number 1, I would just love to let you know about one of my favorite sponsors that'll help you play test all these decks to make sure that it is the right one for you is Mana Traders, the premier place to rent Magic cards online, and basically the best way to find out which deck you need to play in the metagame. Do you want to hop onto the next hot thing? You can do that with Mana Traders, and you can support the channel using my Mana Traders link in the description below, or you can get 15% off by using my coupon code Nikachu. Now remember, I have deck lists to all these archetypes in the description below. If there's anything you want to play, go check that out in the description. Moving on to number 1, and it's actually just randomly the hottest thing on the block right now, is Heliod Company. So this is a deck that also didn't get affected by bans. I can't really say that the metagame's completely flooded with the deck, but over like the last week, the trend is moving towards Heliod Company. People want to try this deck out, and honestly, it's a very solid, strong deck. It's got 2 combos involved, either with like infinite life with Spike Feeder, but also infinite damage with Walking Ballista, combined with Heliod Sun's Crown. And I mean, solid deck, and it just seems to be the choice of a lot of really strong modern players, and if they put up a lot of results, and they already have, the deck might just get more and more popular. I don't know how well it's going to hold the number 1 spot compared to the other decks in the metagame. How well is it going to face against the heat? Because I know decks like, Control, Izzet Prowess, they can hold the top spot very well. They have now for months. Heliod Company, this is the first time that they are insanely popular, and I think this is one of the number 1 decks that you need to be prepared for if you want to win a big event. So what do you think of my top 10 list? Agree or disagree? What are you going to be playing, and how are you going to be prepared for this list? Let me know in the comments section below. This has been Nikachu, Merfolk Master, reminding you to subscribe.